together with American songwriter, we had the chance to talk to Soko.
Adam was able to talk to Soko over the phone, and she has a new record out, Feel Feelings.
Make sure to check out our Facebook page and YouTube channel at Bringing It Backwards, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bringing Back Pod.
We'd appreciate your support if you follow and subscribe to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're Bringing It Backwards with Soko.
Hi.
Hi, Soko. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much for chatting with me this morning. I don't know if it's this morning for you. It's the morning here.
It is morning for me. It's 9:30. I'm in LA. Where are you?
Oh, San Diego. I'm just south of you.
Oh, great.
Cool. Soko, I read you were born in France. Is this true?
It is true. What else do you know about me?
A few things. We'll get to them.
I was born in France in 1985. One morning of October 26th, the same day as my mom. I share a birthday with my mom.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Born in France.
That's
Share a birthday with mom. How did you get into music originally?
I was always sort of like a little music nerd growing up. And when I was 16 is when I left home and moved to Paris from the south of France.
Oh, wow.
And quit school and got my first computer and discovered illegal downloads. And I literally started to download every possible thing. I would buy Enemy, Rolling Stones, whatever, and any bands that looked cool or that they were raving about, I would just go up and download it and started to build a crazy little music library. And that's how I got into being a music nerd and fan. Mm-hmm. And I just realized that I was constantly picking up on all the melodies of the instruments. Like I would always remember the bass lines. I would always remember the guitar leaks. I would always pick up on the lyrics and melodies really quick. And then I started going to shows, and I don't know how you call that in English, but I can't see well from far.
Oh yeah, far. Nearsighted? If you can't see far, I don't know. It's confusing. I think it's nearsighted if you can't see far away.
But that meant that I would always go front row at all the shows, mm-hmm. so that I could see something. So I would always try to sneak my way up and wanted to be, as close as possible to where the music's being made. Even though, now I know that's not where the best sound happens, because the best sound is at sound desk.
Right.
But I was always up there. And I remember a few times, I think once was when I was 16, seeing LCD Sound System on stage. And it was the time where I was listening to The Rapture that had just been produced by James Murphy, and mm-hmm. I don't know, The Rapture and LCD Sound System were playing, and I remember being I wish I was on stage with those guys. They look like they're having so much fun, and I knew all the lyrics because my memory worked in ways that I would listen to something once and I would just remember it.
Wow! And
so I was like, man, I should just be on stage singing with them, because that would be so much more fun than being here. And it took me a few years before I started actually doing it, and that happened when I was 19, I would think. I had always, I'd been playing piano since I was 4, mm-hmm. and I'm doing music theory until I was maybe 10, 11, and then I got sick of it. Mostly because my piano teacher was very French and smoking during the class.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought it was so horrible. I just didn't want to go anymore. And my mom had to have a talk with him, hey, you can't smoke during the class around my child. And he was like, well, it's just how it is. I'm French. I smoke cigarettes. I do whatever I want. And so I stopped going. It was disgusting.
Yeah. He'd just be sitting next to you on the piano smoking.
Totally.
Just ashing on the
and
keys.
Then, totally. It traumatized me.
Oh my god.
And also our piano in my house was obviously in the living room. Like it wasn't going to be in my bedroom.
Uh-huh.
That it was like a little, like a, what's, not like the big pianos.
Not a
what
grand
is it called?
piano?
Upright? No.
Yeah.
Not a grand piano. Upright
yeah,
piano.
Upright piano, yeah.
But it was in the living room, and my parents were always there, and each time I wanted to play piano, they were like, oh, listen, like, no, it's not the time. Can't you see? Like, we're having aperitif. Like, we're watching the news or we're whatever. So I could never play. It was never the right time. I was always in the way. So I kind of just gave it up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I left home and started living by myself, I kind of like picked up the piano again and got a few keyboards and then I don't know, I started making stuff on GarageBand like very casually and got my first ukulele. That was, when before the ukulele trend happened, and I thought, only 4 strings, kids can play it. Surely enough, I can figure it out on my own.
Sure.
Which I did. Spent a lot of time with the YouTube tutorials, and yeah, that was it. I put my first songs on MySpace, and that was MySpace time, and it just kind of like took off right away, more than I wanted or imagined.
Really?
And
like, so you put your first stuff on MySpace, and then what happened when you say it kind of just took off? What was the first traction you started seeing?
This, it was a song that I really don't like, but someone found it on MySpace, a DJ from like a huge radio in Denmark, and they downloaded it from MySpace, put it on the radio, and it became number 1.
Oh my god!
Like overnight.
Wow. And you don't know how they stumbled upon it? They just found it on MySpace?
Yeah. It was just that time where like people would get discovered on MySpace. But like it was even earlier than people would think that they could.
Mm-hmm.
But then once that took off, then other countries followed. And then I remember playing my first show in Copenhagen. And it was sold out in 10 minutes. And it was pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I didn't even have a record out, like nothing. It was just based on that one song. And it was really scary.
Yeah, what'd you have to do? Just start writing? How did you come up with the set?
I was playing mostly by myself. I think I had like maybe like a guitar player with me at the time, but not even like a band. And I would just play like super intimate sets and just like play between like keys and drums and I don't know, like guitar, a bit of ukulele. And I seriously, I don't know. I don't know how I was so bold and strong and not caring about anything and so prolific and so creative at that time. I think that is what is beautiful about youth. But now that I'm 34, if you'd ask me right now, like, go play some songs, I would be terrified. I'd be like, I'd have to like rehearse, and I'm not ready. And but at that time, I could literally sometimes like if my set would be cut short on a tour because I was like opening for someone, and people would be like more coming for me than for the act after, then I would be like, hey, it's okay, guys. I'll just go play some songs in the parking lot. Yeah, whoever wants to come, I can just continue the show there. And literally hundreds of people would leave the room, and I would end up just doing like a full show on a parking lot. And then the act after would be like, you can't do that. You can't take all of our audience out on a parking lot. And it was like, oh, I mean, I thought it would be like 10 people. I just didn't know, like genuinely didn't know.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I get in a lot of trouble for doing things like that.
Yeah, a lot of bands probably didn't want to headline with you on the bill if like the whole crowd was going to go outside after you played.
But it was fun. It was things that I'm happy like I experienced that, because it was definitely a different time and era.
Yeah. So when that song started getting played on the Denmark radio station, how did you find out about it? Like, how did you know a station in Denmark was playing your song?
I think people on MySpace were like commenting on my MySpace or something. That's how I found out. And I think maybe they reached out to me.
Okay.
Like asking me if I'd want to play a show or if I had a label or whatever. I can't really remember, to be honest.
And then CeeLo Green ended up sampling that song, right? Or using a piece of it?
Oh, yeah.
How did that happen?
Oh,
do you remember?
I hate that song.
Oh, you do?
I hate even talking about it. No, I don't know. I don't know. He just did. I mean, it's just like people would just find the song and like whatever. CeeLo Green did something with it and put it on a mixtape.
Okay, so you started getting traction. Are record labels coming to you at this point?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I'm meeting with every possible record label on the planet at that time.
Okay.
And, playing the game of like having them take you to lunch and stuff and chit chat and be like, yeah. And whatever, I signed my deal with Because Music, which is still my label to this day, a little indie French label. I mean, not a little indie French label, the biggest indie French label.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have like Justice, Charlotte Gainsbourg, Christine and the Queen.
Yeah, Major Lazer.
Major Lazer. Yeah.
Wow.
So I signed with them.
And was that like a hard decision, or did you kind of know?
I just remember being in London and meeting with all these labels in London and then getting a weird phone call from a number I didn't know right when I was like about to meet Universal or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And picking up the phone and being like, hey, and he's like, hello, it's Emmanuel de Burtel. You know who I am? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, how come we haven't met yet? And I'm like, because you haven't called me before. And he's like, well, I'm calling you now. I hear you have very bad reputation. And I'm like, I hear you have very bad reputation too. And I'm like, why do I have bad reputation? He's like, because you meet with all these labels and you don't want to sign with anyone. I'm like, yeah, I'm taking my time. Why shouldn't I? And then we ended up meeting and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I could work with this weird grumpy guy.
That's funny. Do you know who I am?
I love him. He's a character. He's awesome.
That's really cool. And then so you signed with Because Music, and then you put out your first LP. What was the first thing that they did for you?
No, so I signed with them. I started recording a double album.
Oh my!
Because I had written so many songs, and my advance at that time were huge. Like, I mean, huge for me. That was like the biggest amount of money that I've ever come close to. And to these days, those deals don't exist anymore. And I was really poorly advised. And most of that money I never saw. And it got spent on making that record that I thought was costing, I can't remember the numbers, but like a tenth of what I thought it was. And then I never finished this record. I hated it. Then I realized that I'd spent all of my advances on making this, but I hated it. So I just trashed it.
So you scrapped the whole album?
And the whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
And then I ended up making something else, like keeping maybe a few of the tracks, but like re-recording them and rearranging them and whatnot. And yeah, then it took me 5 years to make my first record after that. I think I was just so pressured by everyone to like make things like that song that I didn't like, and I really didn't want to do that. So I was like, I'm just going to make a really intimate record that feels like me, and it's very emotional, and it's like sleepy songs, and you know.
Well, they obviously liked
I went
what
the
you
opposite
did.
way.
Yeah. You waited, you said how many years? 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
Wow. And because music obviously let you do that, like what happened when you said, you know what, I don't want to put out this double
Well, I knew
album.
I was working on it all the time.
Right.
Because I kept sending them stuff and all, but I just got super depressed. I did a tour in Australia, I remember in 2009. And I was playing for like massive crowds, like 10,000 people.
Jeez.
Songs that I didn't even necessarily like. And it was so weird to have these many people know about me, follow me, whatever. Like my entire tour in Australia was sold out.
That's cool.
And it was just really awkward that I had so many people following me without even having any music properly out. And it just felt like too much pressure. And I got really like in my head about it. Like I didn't want people to recognize me. I didn't want people to know, like, you know, ask who I'm dating and like all these things. I just wasn't ready for that at all.
Yeah, it kind of just happened to you, right? I mean, you put a song up on MySpace, and then now you're selling out an entire tour in Australia. Wow, yeah, I can imagine it being pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, so yeah, that took me a while after that to figure what I really wanted to do and like take back ownership of where I wanted to go with my music and realize that I want to make it really personal and vulnerable, and that's all that I want to be about.
So then you ended up writing I Thought I Was an Alien.
Yes.
Do you remember the first song on that? Do you remember the first song that you wrote and you're like, okay, this is actually what I want to do and the sound I want, and this is definitely going to go on the record?
No. I remember the last song I wrote for it.
Okay. Tell me about
that.
Which
was I Just Want to Make It. I wrote I Just Want to Make It New with You. That was the first time I picked up a bass, and I wrote that song right away when I picked up a bass.
Oh, cool.
And I I recorded it on GarageBand and all by myself while I was in the studio recording with that guy Fritz Michaud, who helped me make this record, who was amazing, and I loved working with him. And then I was like, hey, Fritz, I just recorded a song last night, and it's going to be the first track of the record. And he's like, don't you think it's a little weird to have, like, that line, you will discover me through my songs, learn my heartbreaks and fears and depression, hear all the cracks and the lack of talent, and I hope that you don't hate me by then? I'm like, no, I think it's cool.
Yeah, totally.
He was like, okay, if you say so. And then, and also before that, I had written We Might Be Dead by Tomorrow that I was really proud of, and that really felt like the most me song I'd ever written. And yeah.
And then that song got featured in what, like a short video or something? Tell me about that kind of went viral, right?
Yeah, but that was also like years after I did it.
Oh, it was way after the record came out?
Yeah, years after. Like, I didn't think anyone would ever pay attention to that song. I mean, it was always kind of like a favorite on when I was touring and stuff. And it was also like being picked up for a lot of things. And then I did, this sort of video that was called First Kiss that went viral. And the director was like, oh, maybe we could, I was like, oh, if you need any music, let me know. And they were like, oh yeah, what about this song? I was like, yeah, sure. And I gave it to them, like not thinking that it was going to do anything. And like, we didn't even do contracts with my label or anything because I didn't think it was going to do anything. I don't think I even told my label, and I got in a lot of trouble for that when it became viral. Because I was like, yeah, sure, use my music, whatever. Nobody cares about it anyway. lol.
And then it just becomes this viral hit.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like number one most streamed song, I think. Or like, yeah, I think it was like Billboard most streamed song.
Wow. Was that another one of those moments like the radio station thing where it just kind of came out of nowhere and you're like, whoa, and I have a number one hit on Billboard?
Totally came out of nowhere, but also it was at a time, I can't remember the year, like a few years ago, but it was at a time where there hadn't been that many viral videos, but I already knew that viral means, it's hot for 2 days and then it's gone. So I was very aware of like the instant thing that was happening, and also knowing that like people won't remember in 2 years or a month.
Sure.
But you do.
I do.
The internet remembers. You can find the information out there.
Totally. Okay, so then that song goes viral. Then you, when do you start working on the second record, My Dreams Dictate My Reality?
I wonder if I was already in the process of recording that album when that happened, I think.
Oh, okay.
I can't really remember the timeline, to be honest. Either it was finished or I was recording it. But yeah, I started making that record with Ross Robinson as a producer, and it took me a while to make it. Like, I think I lived at his house for like 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And I was coming up with a lot of the songs in the studio, but also a bunch of songs were already written. And yeah, it was fun to make that record. We were waking up in the morning, looking at the ocean, because he lived in Venice, and going to yoga, and we had the same diet. He was also vegan and gluten free and doesn't eat sugar and doesn't eat processed food, so we'd be very healthy, and in the afternoon start making music into the night, and that was really great.
Very cool. And then that becomes your second record, My Dreams Dictate My Reality.
Yes.
And did you tour on that album?
I toured it a little bit, but for like a month or something in Europe. And I think I also did tour it with opening for Foster the People in the US.
Wow.
Which was a huge tour. And that was great. That was probably a month or a month and a half tour too.
Was that the first time you had played in the States?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, like a proper tour, yes. I had done a bunch of either local shows or like New York shows. I had done a show with this band Azure Ray before. Yeah, so that was kind of like the biggest thing in the US that I've done.
Cool. Wow.
And
Foster
and then it was like arena tour.
Wow.
So that was pretty big. Yeah. And then after that, I made a few movies, so it cut my touring schedule a bit shorter than expected.
Were you always acting and performing?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But when I'm making a record, I would take a pause on acting, and vice versa. When I'm acting, I don't even pick up an instrument.
Okay. So then after that second record and the tour and stuff, you focus back on a little bit heavier on the acting?
Yeah, because also, it's very hard to make a penny with music, but acting goes straight in my pocket. It doesn't go first to a record label to pay back my debt of advances that will never get paid back before I can see one penny. So yeah, I also have to. There's also that aspect of things.
Sure. Well, tell me about "Oh to Be a Rainbow." You put that out for Pride last month?
I put it out for Pride. I had to direct that video too, because it was quarantine, and my DP is one of my very close friends. So I was like, oh, we could just do it, just the two of us and my projector, and, you know, figure out a studio that we can go into that is empty and that they're just going to let us use it. And we won't have to like see or touch anyone or anything. and yeah, we just did that in like a few hours.
Oh, wow.
We did it very like DIY, like, okay, let's just do that. The only thing that was lighting me was the projector. There was no light. And it was like a tiny, you know, pocket camera. It was not like a big camera.
Right. Yeah, you didn't shoot it on some like $100,000 camera. It was just very DIY style.
Nope. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. What made you decide to put this song out? Did you want to do it in parallel with Pride Month?
Yes, 100%. I'd been thinking about putting it out for Pride since we were talking about the release. I always said I want to put the song out in June. Like 6 months ago, I was already thinking about it. Cool. But I had a whole other concept for the video that obviously I couldn't do because of COVID. Mm-hmm. But I like how it turned out. So whatever, we're doing with what we can.
Yeah, I like the video. During this like quarantine stuff, have you been able to do any of the like Facebook Live or Instagram Live stuff? Have you done any of that?
I mean, I didn't play shows on Instagram, but I did some Instagram Live with just kind of like playing people some of the songs of the records a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Here and there.
Like a listening party type thing?
Yeah, but just like 30 seconds, just to like give them a little insight on what's coming, but not the whole thing.
Feel Feelings?
Yeah. It's coming out next week.
The 3 songs that are out now, does that set a pretty good tone for the rest of the record?
I think so, yeah. There's some songs that are a little bit more like mellow, I would say. Mm-hmm. A little bit more like shoegazy. There's one song called Now What that's a lot more shoegazy, and another one called Hurt Me With Your Ego. That's also kind of like a little sleepy shoegaze song. And yeah, I think it reflects what's on there. Pretty good.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it's exciting. I can't wait till it comes out. Do you plan on like touring the record and stuff after this lets up? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I would love to. Right now, it's a little bit hard to imagine how that's going to look like. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to put too much of my focus on there because it's so uncertain. But it is still something that I love doing. But also now I'm a mom and I have a 1.5-year baby that I'm like, how would I tour with my baby?
Oh, yeah, congratulations. Wow, 1.5 years. I have a 4 and a 12-year-old, so I know what you're talking about. So, wow.
Yeah, it's like a little change of life, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Big change of life.
Yeah.
Now I see him poking his fingers under the door to come to me.
Right now?
I'm still working, my love. Oh,
I just have one more question for you, and then I'll leave you to your
Sorry, he just brought me a flower.
Aw.
Yeah, mommy time.
Well, Soko, thank you so much for chatting with me this morning. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I mean, the only advice is make art with your heart and make it as vulnerable and as you as possible, because there's only one you, and whatever you're trying to rip off is already out there. So don't do that. Just do as much as possible and keep doing it until it feels right. And also, the best advice I came around before making my second album was, okay, there's this artist that I really liked that we were having dinner with a group of friends, and suddenly her song came up during the dinner. And I was like, oh my God, that's your song. And she was like, oh yeah, I love that song. I was like, oh my God. if that was me right now, I would be mortified. I would probably want to leave the room and be like, someone's playing a sick joke on me. Why would you play my song at like in front of all my friends at a dinner?
Yeah.
And then she was like, well, why? You don't like your music? And I was like, what? That blew my mind, because I was just writing music to just make music, but I never thought, would I listen to it? And it's very different. Mm-hmm. And I never ever thought about it. And as a songwriter, it just blew my mind, because I was just like, oh yeah, I'll just write whatever. But then would I actually be okay listening to it? Like, would it go well with the playlist of all my favorite songs? Would I skip it, or would I be like, oh, who is it? So that's kind of the mood that I make my record in, Feel Feelings, being like, I would want to be able to like put this on playlists, because I love making playlists of, you know, all my favorite songs, and that it wouldn't disrupt, or like it would fit perfectly. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, I wanted to make this record really emotional and extremely personal, and make sure that it looks like me in every possible way, and that it's a perfect time capsule of who I was then, and that it has, you know, all of what is important for me subject wise, from, you know, being okay with being vulnerable in public, and not hiding emotions, and failed traumatic relationships, and Oh to Be a Rainbow is probably, I mean, I've written a lot of songs for women mm-hmm. in the past, but that was probably the most out there, like, hey, I'm gay. So that felt also like really good to, you know, have a song that reflects my engagement with the LGBTQ plus community. And yeah.